Between October 10th and December 17th, 1942, German soldiers in Stalingrad began falling dead at an alarming rate, more than 3 per day. They searched for a single elite sniper, but they couldn't explain how he was attacking simultaneously at different points across the city. German High Command sent their best marksmen to hunt him down. 11 of them never returned. What the Germans didn't know is that they weren't facing one man. They were facing a revolutionary tactic created by a peasant boy who hunted deer in the Ural Mountains. How did the Sixes tactic, invented by Vasily Zaytsev using lessons from hunting wild animals, kill 225 Germans and create a generation of snipers who would eliminate over 6,000 more soldiers? To understand how a farmer's boy could dismantle the most powerful military machine ever assembled, you first need to understand what Stalingrad was, because this wasn't a battle. This was the end of the world. August 23rd, 1942. The Luftwaffe dropped more bombs on Stalingrad in a single afternoon than the British dropped on London during the entire Blitz. 40,000 civilians died in the first week. The Volga River turned black with ash. The city that bore Stalin's name became 600 square kilometers of hell. And hell had visitors. Army Group South, 270,000 German troops, battle-hardened veterans who had crushed Poland in 27 days, France in 46 days, and had driven across 1,000 kilometers of Soviet territory in less than a year. They were led by General Friedrich Paulus, a meticulous strategist who had helped design Operation Barbarossa itself. They brought 500 tanks, 3,000 artillery pieces, complete air superiority. They had every advantage except one: the rubble. You see, the Wehrmacht's doctrine was built for open warfare, Blitzkrieg, rapid mechanized assaults across open terrain. But Stalingrad wasn't terrain anymore. It was a moonscape of twisted steel and pulverized concrete. Every factory became a fortress. Every apartment block became a killing ground. Tanks were useless. Air superiority meant nothing when the front line was a room, a staircase, a basement. The average life expectancy of a Soviet soldier arriving in Stalingrad was 24 hours. For a Soviet officer, it was 3 days. The Germans called it Rattenkrieg, rat warfare. But something was happening in the ruins that Paulus couldn't explain. His casualty reports showed a disturbing pattern. Officers were dying at a rate that defied probability. Company commanders, artillery observers, machine gun teams, all falling to single shots from unknown positions. And whenever they sent teams to investigate, those teams would vanish. His intelligence officers insisted it must be a coordinated group of Soviet snipers, some kind of elite unit. They were wrong, but they were also right, because in the middle of this industrial graveyard, one man was turning the hunting lessons of his grandfather into the most effective killing system the Eastern Front had ever seen. Vasily Grigorievich Zaytsev was born on March 23, 1915, in a place so remote that most maps didn't bother marking it. Yeleninskoye, a village of perhaps 40 families scattered across the frozen foothills of the Ural Mountains in Orenburg Oblast. His family were peasants, not farmers in the agricultural sense. Peasants. The kind of people for whom winter wasn't a season, it was a war. You hunted or you starved. There was no market, no roads, just mountains, forests, and cold that could kill you in an hour if you made a mistake. When Vasily was 8 years old, his grandfather handed him a rifle, not a toy, an actual weapon, a Berdan rifle the kind that fired one round before you had to reload the entire mechanism. The old man's instruction was simple. A hunter does not miss, because in the Urals, you didn't get second chances. A wounded wolf would kill you. A missed deer meant your family went hungry. The animals were smarter than you, faster than you, and better adapted to the environment than you. Your only advantage was patience and precision. At age 12, Vasily killed his first wolf. 1 shot, 1 kill. With a rifle so heavy he could barely carry it on his back. But more importantly, he learned how to read behavior, how to watch a deer for 3 days and memorize every pattern of movement, how to recognize the difference between an animal being cautious and an animal being suspicious, how to disappear into terrain so completely that wolves would walk past him without knowing he was there. He learned that the best hiding spots aren't the obvious ones, not the tall grass or the thick bushes, but the spots that make no logical sense, the depression in the snow that's too small, the shadow that's at the wrong angle, the place where no predator would expect another predator to be. By the time Vasily was 18, he could track a deer across frozen rock, distinguish between 8 different types of winter bird calls, and shoot a running target at 400 meters with iron sights. Then he joined the Soviet Pacific Fleet, age 22. Vasily Zaytsev became a clerk in the artillery department, not a combat row, a desk job. He did accounting, managed inventory. Eventually became the chief of the finance department at Vladivostok, a hunter filling out paperwork. And then, June 22nd, 1941, Operation Barbarossa, Germany invaded the Soviet Union with 3.8 million men, 3,600 tanks, 2,700 aircraft, the largest invasion force in human history. Vasily volunteered for frontline service immediately. The Navy refused. He was too valuable as an administrator. He volunteered again and again. It took him 15 months to get transferred to the army. September 17th, 1942, Vasily Zaytsev arrived in Stalingrad as a senior warrant officer assigned to the 1047th Rifle Regiment of the 284th Rifle Division, the Tomsk Division, part of Chuikov's 62nd Army, which was holding the city by its fingernails. He was issued a Mosin-Nagant rifle, standard infantry equipment. No scope, no special designation, just another body in the meat grinder. His first combat action was during a German assault on a factory complex. An officer appeared at 800 meters. Vasily raised his rifle, compensated for wind, breathed out, and fired. The officer dropped. 2 soldiers ran to check the body. Vasily killed both of them before they could kneel. 3 shots, 3 kills, at a distance most infantry wouldn't even attempt. His company commander witnessed it. Within an hour, Vasily was promoted to sniper, awarded a medal for bravery and, most importantly, given his first rifle with a telescopic sight. But Vasily looked at the rifle, and then he looked at the ruins of Stalingrad, and he realized something that no military academy would have taught him. He was hunting again. The environment had changed, but the principles hadn't, and more importantly, he realized that lone hunters are vulnerable. Because what do wolves hunt? Lone prey. What do wolves fear? Packs. Vasily created the sixes. The concept was simple, but it required you to think like prey that had become predator. You take 6 men, not 6 individual snipers spread across a battlefield, 6 men working as a single organism. You divide them into 3 pairs, a shooter and a spotter for each position. Then you deploy them in a triangular formation covering a single zone. Here's what made it brilliant. Position 1 can see Position 2's blind spots. Position 2 can see Position 3's blind spots. Position 3 can see Position 1's blind spots. They're not covering independent sectors, they're covering each other. If an enemy sniper tries to hunt one pair, he exposes himself to the other two. If he tries to move between positions, all three pairs have overlapping fields of fire. Communication wasn't done by radio, which could be intercepted. It was done by tensioned ropes running between positions. One pull meant target spotted. 2 pulls meant enemy sniper. 3 pulls meant relocate now. And here's the hunter's logic that made it perfect. When you're hunting a wolf pack, the wolves don't stay in one place. They probe, they move, they test your position. So Zaytsev's teams never fired more than 2 to 3 shots before one pair would relocate to a pre-scouted alternate position, while the other 2 provided overwatch. The Germans were hunting for a sniper, a singular threat. What they were actually facing was a predator swarm, a coordinated pack that could kill from 3 directions, disappear, and reform somewhere else before you even understood what happened. Zaytsev had taken the lessons from hunting deer in the Urals, the principle that prey survives by being unpredictable and predators succeed by being patient, and inverted them. He made snipers into prey that hunted. By mid-October 1942, German officers stopped moving during daylight hours. Vasily's routine was methodical, almost boring in its precision. He woke 2 hours before dawn, ate nothing. Drinking tea would make you need to urinate, and you couldn't leave your position for 12 hours. He would study hand-drawn maps of his sector, marking every window, every pile of rubble, every depression in the ground that could hide a human silhouette. Then he and his spotter, Nikolai Kulikov, would move into position. Not walking, crawling. Sometimes it took 3 hours to move 50 meters. They would settle into spots that made no tactical sense, inside shattered water pipes, under collapsed staircases, in one case buried in a pile of frozen German corpses. And then they waited. Patience isn't a skill you can teach in military school. It's something you build hunting deer for 3 days in -40-degree cold, waiting for the one moment when the animal's guard drops. October 12th. A German artillery observer stood up to use his binoculars. 300 meters. Vasily fired. The man fell. October 13th. A machine gun crew rotated positions. 400 meters, 2 shots, 2 dead. October 15th. An officer lit a cigarette while reading a map. 600 meters, 1 shot. The kills weren't spectacular, they weren't dramatic, they were systematic, clinical, like a farmer butchering livestock, but the cumulative effect was something the German command hadn't prepared for. Because here's what was happening in the German trenches. Officers stopped giving orders during the day. Communication broke down. Units became paralyzed. Soldiers refused to move through open ground even when ordered. Entire companies would sit in their positions for 16 hours waiting for darkness because the psychological cost of movement was too high. One German diary, recovered later, described it. We don't fear the Russians. We fear the silence. We fear the moment between when you stand up and when you hear the shot, because by then, you're already dead. The Russians called him the Hare of Stalingrad at first, a reference to his last name. The Germans had a different name, der Gespenst, the ghost. By November 1st, Vasily Zaytsev had killed 103 confirmed enemy soldiers. By November 20th, that number was 178. Every single kill was documented, verified by a witness and recorded in the division log. But it wasn't just Vasily, because by mid-November he had started training others, teaching them the sixes system, showing them how to read behavior, how to disappear, how to be patient. On November 28th, one of his students, Viktor Medvedev, killed 8 Germans in a single day using the triangular formation Vasily had taught him. On December 3rd, another student, Anatoly Chekhov, eliminated an entire German sniper team that had been hunting him. The German team was using standard doctrine, find a high position with good visibility. Anatoly knew they'd be looking for him on the ground level, so he went higher than them, into a building they'd already cleared. He killed all 3 from above. The students called themselves the Zaichata, the little hares, the play on Zaytsev's name. By mid-December, Zaytsev's trained snipers had collectively killed over 1,200 Germans. But something else was happening. The reports were reaching Berlin. December 8th, 1942, the German High Command issued a new directive to the 6th Army in Stalingrad. Priority 1 objective: eliminate the Soviet sniper known as Zaytsev. Not capture a factory, not advance 200 meters, kill 1 man. Because Paulus understood what was happening. His officers were terrified. Entire companies were combat ineffective because his men wouldn't move. The psychological damage was exceeding the actual casualties. One sniper was paralyzing an army of 250,000 men. First, they sent their own counter-sniper teams. Specialists from the 24th Panzer Division, men with 30, 40, 50 confirmed kills. Veterans who had fought across France, Yugoslavia, and deep into Russia. Vasily killed 6 of them in 4 days. The pattern was always the same. The German snipers would set up in tactically sound positions. High ground, good visibility, strong cover, textbook positioning. And Vasily would hunt them like he hunted wolves in the Urals, not by challenging them directly, but by reading their behavior. He noticed that German snipers moved in predictable patterns. They preferred right-handed shooting angles. They repositioned at the same times each day. They trusted their optics too much and forgot to watch for ground-level threats. December 12th. A German sniper team occupied the 3rd floor of a destroyed department store. It was perfect, elevated, multiple exit routes, clear sight lines. Vasily spent 6 hours watching them through a crack in a rubble pile 400 meters away. He noticed that every 30 minutes the spotter would scan left to right and then look down to write notes. A 10-second window when he wasn't observing. When the window came, Vasily fired. The sniper died. The spotter looked up, tried to locate the source. Vasily's partner, Kulikov, fired from a completely different angle. The spotter died. 2 kills, 0 return fire, 0 intelligence gained about their position. The Germans escalated. If snipers couldn't kill him, artillery would. On December 15th, German forward observers identified what they believed was Zaytsev's operating area, a 200-meter section of the Lazur chemical factory. They called in a full artillery barrage, 90 minutes of sustained shelling. They pulverized every structure in the zone. When the smoke cleared, a patrol went in to confirm the kill. Vasily shot the patrol leader from a position 600 meters outside the kill zone. He had never been in the factory. He'd been using it as a decoy while operating from a drainage system half a kilometer away. A Soviet soldier later recalled Zaytsev's comment, "They were very loud today. I had to cover my ears." But the Germans had one more option. December 18th, 1942. German command assembled something unprecedented, a special unit. 30 of the Wehrmacht's most elite snipers pulled from 6 different divisions. Men with a combined total of over 1,400 confirmed kills. Some were instructors from sniper schools, others were Jaeger mountain troops who had hunted in the Alps since childhood. Their mission had one objective: find Zaytsev's network and eliminate it. The German commander briefed them with one sentence: "You're not fighting soldiers, you're hunting a pack," and that's exactly what they tried to do. December 19th, the German sniper unit deployed into the ruins of the Red October factory district. They moved as 8 independent teams, each with 3 to 4 men. They used the same tactics that had worked across every other battlefield: secure elevated positions, establish overlapping fields of fire, wait for targets to appear. What they didn't understand is that Vasily had been watching them infiltrate since dawn, because here's what a hunter knows that a soldier doesn't. When you're hunting predators, you don't wait in ambush. You let them settle into their hunting grounds. You let them get comfortable. You let them think they're safe. And then you kill them when they're watching the wrong direction. The German teams spread out across a 600-meter section. They were looking for Russians, scanning windows, doorways, rubble piles, the places where Soviet snipers would logically hide. Vasily and his teams weren't in any of those places. They were positioned on the same level as the Germans, in some cases behind them, using the exact terrain the Germans had deemed cleared and therefore safe. At 9:47 a.m., Vasily gave the signal. 11 shots fired within 4 seconds, 8 Germans dead. The remaining teams scrambled to locate the shooters, returning fire at positions that were already empty. Vasily's teams had relocated the moment they fired, a tactic drilled so deeply that it was automatic. The Germans tried to adapt. They moved positions, reformed, attempted to create their own overlapping fields. But they were operating on military doctrine. Zaytsev's teams were operating on predator instinct. By 2 p.m., the German unit had lost 19 men. By 4 p.m., the survivors were pinned in 3 separate buildings, unable to move, unable to retreat, burning through ammunition, shooting at ghosts. At dusk, when the light faded enough to obscure sightlines, the remaining Germans attempted to withdraw. Vasily had positioned 2 teams specifically on their withdrawal route. 5 more Germans died running back to their own lines. The next morning, Soviet patrols found 27 bodies in the Red October district. 11 of them were confirmed as sniper specialists. The German command did what they should have done at the start. They issued a grid removal order. Forget precision, forget counter-sniper operations. They were going to systematically obliterate every structure in Zaytsev's known operating zones. Artillery, airstrikes, scorched earth. If they couldn't hunt him, they'd erase the terrain itself. January 10th, 1943, Vasily was operating near the Barricadi gun factory when the shelling started. Not targeted fire, systematic annihilation. The Germans were erasing entire city blocks, collapsing everything that could hide a sniper. He had survived 68 days of the most intense urban combat in military history. He had killed 225 Germans, trained dozens of students, created a tactical system that would be studied for generations. But you can't dodge an artillery barrage. Soviet records indicate it was mortar fire. Some accounts say he stepped on a mine. Others say it was a random shell fragment. The exact cause doesn't matter. What matters is the result. Explosive munitions detonated within meters of Vasily's position. Shrapnel tore through his face, his eyes. When his unit found him, half of his face was gone. He was breathing, barely. His eyes were destroyed. Blood covered everything. The medic who reached him first wrote later, "I thought he was already dead. I was checking for bodies to recover. Then I saw his hand move." They evacuated him to a field hospital, from there to a medical facility in Moscow. The diagnosis was clear: total blindness. irreversible combat wounds. The hair of Stalingrad would never see again, except that diagnosis was wrong, because Vasily Zaytsev ended up in the care of Dr. Vladimir Filatov, the founder of the Filatov Institute of Eye Diseases in Odessa. Filatov was one of the world's pioneers in corneal transplant surgery, a procedure so experimental that most doctors considered it surgical fantasy. Filatov operated 7 times over 6 weeks. On February 20th, 1943, Vasily Zaytsev opened his eyes and saw light. By March, he could see shapes. By April, his vision was restored enough to read. The man, who had been declared permanently blind, could see again. Not perfectly, never perfectly, but enough. And the first thing Vasily requested when he could see again wasn't rest, wasn't discharge, wasn't a medal ceremony. He asked to go back to the front. But the Red Army had other plans for Vasily Zaytsev. They made him an instructor, the head of a sniper school, because the Soviet command had finally understood what he had created, not just a tactic, a system, a replicable methodology for turning ordinary soldiers into devastating precision killers. The school was established behind the lines in Saratov. Vasily trained approximately 3 dozen students personally. They called themselves the Zaichata, the little hares. His curriculum wasn't standard military doctrine. It was hunting logic translated to warfare. Lesson 1. Never fire from the same position twice. Animals learn, so do humans. Lesson 2. The best hiding spot is the one that makes no sense, because sense is predictable. Lesson 3. Create decoys, mannequins in uniforms, helmets on sticks. Make the enemy waste ammunition on ghosts. Lesson 4. Learn to read behavior. A nervous soldier looks around. A confident soldier doesn't. Confidence is predictable. Fear is not. Lesson 5. Work in pairs, always. A lone hunter is prey waiting to happen. But most importantly, use the sixes. By the end of 1943, Zaytsev's personally trained snipers had collectively killed over 3,800 Germans. By the end of the war, that number exceeded 6,000. Think about that. One farmer's boy from the Urals, using hunting techniques his grandfather taught him, created a training system that eliminated over 6,000 enemy soldiers. Not through his own shooting, through the multiplication of his knowledge. But Vasily wasn't done fighting. By mid-1943, his eyesight had recovered enough that he requested combat assignment. They sent him to the Donbass offensive, then to the Dnieper river crossings, then to Odessa. By the end of the war, Vasily Zaytsev's personal kill count stood at approximately 242 confirmed enemy soldiers. He was awarded Hero of the Soviet Union, the Gold Star Medal, the Order of Lenin. His name became propaganda. His face appeared on recruitment posters. The Soviet government wrote books about him, made movies about him. And Vasily hated it. Because here's what the Soviet propaganda machine did. They needed a hero, a symbol, so they embellished, they invented, they created the story of a legendary duel between Vasily and the German super sniper named Major Erwin König, supposedly the head of a sniper school in Berlin. The duel never happened, at least not the way they described it. British historian Anthony Beevor later found Soviet Ministry of Defense archives that proved König didn't exist. The entire 3-day sniper duel was Soviet propaganda designed to boost morale. Was there a skilled German sniper Vasily dueled? Possibly. Researcher Oleg Kaminsky suggests it might have been Corporal Hermann Stoff of the 295th Infantry Division who had 103 confirmed kills, but we'll never know for certain. And here's the interesting thing. Vasily himself confirmed in his memoirs that some kind of duel occurred. But he was also a loyal Soviet soldier writing during the Cold War. How much was truth? How much was politics? The answer died with him, but the propaganda doesn't change the mathematics. 225 kills in 68 days in Stalingrad, that's verified. 11 enemy snipers eliminated personally, that's verified. The creation of the sixes tactic, that's verified. Russian military forces still use variations of that tactic today, including during operations in Chechnya and Syria. The training of 36 snipers who killed over 6,000 Germans. That's verified. Vasily Zaytsev wasn't the deadliest sniper of World War II. Simo Häyhä of Finland had over 505 confirmed kills, but Häyhä fought in forests and snow, familiar terrain. Zaytsev fought in an environment no human had fought in before, urban warfare at a scale of devastation that broke every tactical assumption. And he didn't just survive it, he revolutionized it. After the war, Vasily did something that feels almost impossible to believe. He went home. Not to Moscow for parades and ceremonies, not to military academies as a lecturer. He went back to the Urals, to the forests and mountains where his grandfather taught him to shoot. He became an engineer at a manufacturing plant, quiet, anonymous. For 48 years, Vasily Zaytsev lived as a civilian in Kiev, working, raising a family, hunting on weekends. He wrote 2 books about sniping, practical guides, no glory, no drama, just methodology. He helped the Soviet military test the SVD Dragunov rifle after the war, providing feedback on optics, triggers, accuracy. The technical input of a man who understood the machinery of precision. When journalists found him decades later and asked about Stalingrad, about the kills, about the legend, Vasily's response was always the same. I did my duty. Many others did more, but here's the truth that Vasily was too humble to say. James McKenna had his piano wire. Simo Häyhä had his iron sights. Vasily Zaytsev had his sixes. And that tactic, born from watching wolves hunt in the Ural Mountains, changed how every military in the world thinks about sniper warfare. The principle of coordinated pairs with overlapping fields of fire is now standard doctrine in special operations units worldwide. Not because a general invented it in a war room, because a farmer's boy from a village no one's heard of remembered how wolves hunt. Vasily Zaytsev died on December 15, 1991. He was 76 years old. He was buried in Kiev with full military honors, but in 2006, at the request of his family, his remains were moved to Stalingrad, now called Volgograd. They buried him on Mamayev Kurgan, the hill that overlooks the city where he became a legend. His grave marker is simple: name, rank, dates. No mention of 242 kills, no propaganda, no mythology. Just a hunter returned to his hunting ground. If you found this story valuable, please hit the like button below. It helps us continue bringing you these forgotten histories. Subscribe to the channel if you want more stories like this, and we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Where are you watching from? Did you know this history? Thank you for watching, and thank you for keeping these stories alive.